Space Podcast, Third Space Podcast, Third Space Podcast, Third Space Podcast.
Hello, and welcome back to the Third Space Podcast, episode 80, the Transportation Stupidity Administration. Ha! Got him. This episode is about the TSA, that annoying federal administration that slows you down in the airport and might even confiscate your toothpaste, as they did to me recently. And so I am getting my revenge in the smallest way possible by having a podcast episode complaining about air travel. So in this episode, Daniel and I discuss the costs and benefits of the TSA and airport security. In general, there are many costs and not quite as many benefits, but we try to dig into each and see, is it worth it, what we've done to ourselves for the past 23 years? At the end of the episode, we also try to brainstorm some ideas of how the system could be made better, mostly with new technology, some feasible and some a little less feasible. But it's a fun episode, especially if you enjoy me complaining, which I like to do. So I hope you enjoy.
Third Space Podcast, Third Space Podcast, Third Space Podcast, Third Space Podcast.
Hello. Oh.
Well, we kind of chose similar hellos today.
On the same brain length, as they say.
Yeah, similar in fashion.
When was the last time that you
Yesterday.
had to fly somewhere?
Oh, man. Do I need to come up with the specifics? I mean, like,
No.
it was in the last...
Doesn't have to be specific. Just
Seems
wondering.
like an easy answer. When did I last fly? I last flew to...
I mean, the last 5 years?
Yeah, easily. I'm thinking year even. The funny thing is I'm having trouble coming up with where it would have been. Probably like a trip for friends.
Mm-hmm.
Not. Yeah, I don't know though. It's been a little. It can't be that long. I feel like I've flown recently. I'm annoyed now that I can't answer your question just swiftly and correctly. But it feels like in the last 2 years, I'd say, maybe even year. I don't know.
Okay. Well, I mean, you experienced all the mask crap on planes and stuff at some point, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh,
so
definitely the mask stuff. That was actually probably it.
Sometime since then. Well, the reason I asked is not because of that, but I've been doing more traveling lately, just because of work mostly, and then a couple of other things. But I had a recent trip where I was going through security, and my airport is very small. My airport where I live only has 4 gates. All right, not 4 terminals,
Wow.
but 4 gates.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
And so, like, when I show up at the airport, no one is there. There's no line at security, and there are like 8 TSA people just kind of standing there, wearing their blue shirts, just
That's
leaning.
8 too many TSA people. By
Exactly.
the way.
Well, yeah, that's where I'm going here. And so they're like wearing their blue shirts with their badges and, leaning against the stuff. And the person watches me walk up from 50 feet away because there's no one else around. And,
Really make sure you're secure.
And I still have to walk through the zigzagging,
They don't take
thing.
it down. They leave the zigzag thing up just in case there's a lot of people coming at once.
Just in case, you never know. And so, I make my way up, and I handed my ID and everything, and I walk up, and I have to take my laptop out of my bag and put it in a separate thing. I'm the only one here, right? They're all watching me.
Yeah.
Take my shoes off, go stand in the X-ray thing and do the stupid pose. And then come out. Now, the last 6 times I've gone through, we only have one of those X-ray machines in my airport. The last 6 times I've gone through, it has detected an anomaly around my waistband, and they have to pat me down. This happened 6 times in a row.
Wow. I've had that happen several times, by the way. But yeah,
every
it's like, and I've taken my belt off, by the way.
yeah,
so
oh
it's
yeah, I'm not wearing a belt. I've tried wearing different pants, different underwear. So it's not, and
I think they're bored. I think they want. Anyway, go ahead.
and so I tell them, after the third time, I was like, "This is a pattern, and you guys need to like calibrate your machine or something." And I would tell them about it, and they would be like, and depending on who it is, they'd be like, "Oh, well, yeah, I don't know," or like, they just never give any satisfactory response and just do their stupid, ineffective pat down. That's not. I mean, not like I'm wanting them to be more effective, but like it's still not a very good pat down. Anyway, This time it didn't flag the anomaly for whatever reason, so I was for a moment very happy about that until the guy was like, "Oh, can you come over here, sir?" Again, one of 8 people standing around. I'm the only one there. "Can you come over here for a moment, sir?" And he has my bag. And he's like, "Do you have any, liquids or large blah, 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 blah?" And I'm like...
Sharp objects or whatever.
Sharp objects. And I'm like, "No, I don't think I have anything." And he's like, "Oh, I'm going to have to look in here real quick." I'm like, "All right, fine." And so he eventually pulls out my my toiletries bag, and he pulls out my tube of toothpaste. And it's like, this
happened to me before.
This can't go through. We're going to have to confiscate this. Or you can take it back to your car. Or whatever, and I'm like, "Well, I'm not gonna go take my toothpaste back to my car. You can keep it and just get your teeth extra clean or something." But look, all of this just to say this is stupid, right? So my discussion topic for our podcast today is the TSA, the Transportation Security Administration, which from henceforth I'll call the Transportation Stupidity Administration.
Yeah!
Childish.
Get him, Bennett. Get him.
Childish show of annoyance. Anyway.
You got him. Roasted.
Yeah, boom. So I lost my toothpaste. Okay, fine. It's just toothpaste. But
I had that exact thing happen on the way to Alaska with my dad. That trip we did a couple years back, and they took my toothpaste precisely, and it's like.
It's inconsistent.
It's absolutely inconsistent.
I bring my toothpaste. Absolutely. I bring my toothpaste on every trip I go on.
They could go in a toiletry bag, I bet you, and 9 out of 10 bags take something from your bag if they want. And really, I bet you the TSA agents just don't go shopping for toiletries.
Right.
They have when they need something, they just
pull it from the
and say, I need some toothpaste today. You could find that from someone. Or
they probably have a whole aircraft hangar full of toothpaste, confiscated toothpaste and stuff.
Or mouthwash, or. I mean, you could literally get into some nice face washes, makeups. I'm sure lots of them. Sunscreens and things.
I just find it stupid because I was looking at this guy congratulations, you stopped the terrorists. You stopped me. I was going to fluoride treat the plane infrastructure or something. Congrats, you stopped me. It's just what terrorists are we stopping this way? And so today I want to try to, you and I, we can try to weigh the costs and benefits of the TSA, which is not, this is a relatively new thing. I mean, it started in 2001 after 9/11.
Absolutely. It's a post 9/11 reaction, right? That is,
exactly.
There's no other way. It's this bad thing happened. Let's react. And not that reactions are bad. We should learn from things. So something happens and you're like, oh, here's a weakness. How do we address this potential weakness or whatever?
Fair enough. Totally granted. But I think that we're far enough away now that we should be able to at least somewhat coolly look at, okay, what is this costing us, and what is it gaining us, and is it worth it? And maybe we can come up with some better ideas to improve maybe travel in general, if not just this security situation. So just to kind of frame the costs that I'm looking at, the thing that popped foremost to my mind when it comes to the cost of TSA isn't dollars, although that is something we can talk about. It's time. Because
airport efficiency, and all the time.
But I was trying to think, when is the first flight I ever went on? And I don't remember. But 2000, did I fly before 2001? I don't know.
I know my very first flight. It was third grade on the way to Utah because my dad had some sort of business trip and we decided to make a trip out of it. And it was my first. Because my parents took me to the airport when I was a kid just to see the long moving walkways and ride the little tram and stuff. And this was before you could walk up to the gates.
Right.
That was it. You walked up to the gate, so you could explore the whole airport.
That's what I'm saying. Like that.
It was like a mall, basically, and there was something to do. My parents taught me, like, here's how you behave, and look at all the people, and look at all the crying kids, and when you like, don't behave like them. You could argue the merits of that, but like it was just a thing. So then when we first flew, I was so excited. I remember it was like, I mean, you're a kid, like that is ultra exciting. And then my stomach hurt on the way back, and I just have this. It's one of my early memories. Third grade too. I don't know. Like I should remember more earlier, but I remember more earlier, but my stomach really hurt. But that's my first flight. Yes, Utah, Salt Lake City, to and from.
See,
when I was a kid in third grade.
I don't remember what my first flight was. I remember, maybe when I was like 16 or 17, flying by myself once, but I don't recall when my very first flight would have been.
This is interesting to me because, real quick, like when you're a kid, things matter what people have and haven't done. You've never ridden a roller coaster, and this stuff like matters. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like that was kind of once I had flown, I remember being like on a little bit earlier in, so it was like a point of pride that I've flown, and some other friends I've had have flown. We're in the Mile High Club or whatever.
Right, that's what they call it.
Yeah, we've been up there really high. That's what the Mile High Club is. You've flown before. And so I was in it, and others weren't, and I liked it,
Right.
So,
yes, I don't remember mine, but that's the contrast I wanted to draw was the ability to just walk up to the gates essentially, and the time planning before you go to the airport is greatly reduced. The complexity is greatly reduced. The confusion is greatly reduced. And I guess, some might argue the security was greatly reduced, although I'm not sure that the route we took actually improved security that much. So I tried to do some like kind of back of the napkin calculations, or front of the napkin. It doesn't matter. What is it? Back of the napkin? Is that the phrase?
I was just thinking I've never heard it, but it makes perfect sense that you pull out the napkin in the diner and you're quickly jotting down some numbers.
Right. I know there's a phrase about on the napkin, but why does it make sense? Why not
on the napkin?
On the napkin.
Back of the napkin. Like, what is the back?
I know.
Is it, if you start writing, it's the front of the napkin. Like, I don't care what you say.
Well, all right. So the TSA was formed in 2001, late 2001, I think in November of 2001. And I tried to look up some stats, and about 2.9 million passengers every day fly in the United States.
Okay.
And so if we assume, we're going to have to make some assumptions here, but if we assume that 1 hour of their time is taken due to security concerns, some people, that doesn't necessarily mean they're waiting in the security line for an hour, but they have to leave their house extra early to pad in that time. Maybe they are in line for a very long time. I
do feel like somewhere along the way it was like get there an hour before your flight shifted to get there 2 hours before your flight. Like that was something I remember growing up, get there an hour before your flight. And now it really, in my mind, you can get there usually before 2 hours, but they tell you generally 2 hours.
Yes, they do tell you that. Even in my airport, they tell you to get there 2 hours in advance, which is ludicrous.
Yeah.
So that was my assumption, 1 hour. You could quibble about whether that's too high or too low. But just that, right? If every passenger loses 1 hour since 2001, that's a collective 23.9 trillion hours.
Yeah, wow.
And then, but I'm not done. There are also 47,000 personnel working full-time for TSA. So if we factor in their full-time working hours, that's 3 billion more hours.
Are they just like mall cops, by the way, that get paid a lot more because it's a government thing? Could you say the hours again? I kind of walked past that. I was just thinking, I was creating a vision of a TSA agent, and I just had this view of them being like generally like kind of, overweight and like lethargic and just a mall cop basically,
I think that they have slightly more authority than a mall cop, but I don't think
I would think so because it's a government position, but I meant like
skill
wise.
Oh,
exactly.
Skill wise, not really. Well, I mean, I don't know what training and all they go through. I'm sure that there are some very dedicated people, but I mean, you've had the experience, just as I have, going through an airport. Sometimes they're friendly and they effectively do their job and communicate to you what you need to do. Sometimes they're jerks, and sometimes they're really awful, and they're like, like the worst of the fast food line employees or DMV employees that you can imagine. I've had, the whole gamut. And it really depends on the airport. Like, in my airport, maybe they take themselves a little too seriously and some of their efforts aren't required, but at least they're friendly. And when I'm in the Atlanta airport, yeah, it's not even close. It's horrible.
Yeah,
That's the worst I've ever been in. But yeah, so again, an assumption. Right now, there are 47,000 personnel working full time, but I don't know what it was historically. So I just assumed a constant there. And so since 2001, that's 3 billion hours for them.
Goodness.
And so then I figure if we're analyzing the total collective time that this has been taken up, it's not just the 47,000 people. There's some administration behind the scenes, right? So
Of course.
the politicians and the government agencies setting up and organizing the TSA. So I'm going to add just a 25% plus up on the hours, but then I'm going to subtract 10% because I'm sure historically, it was lower than it was now. There's probably an upward trend between 2001 and now. So my back of the napkin, side of the napkin,
Size of that. That's very tiny handwriting.
estimation is 31 trillion man hours of time.
When you
wasted.
say that, I glaze over. If you'd said 200 billion, if you say 31 trillion, it's just at some point I'm just like,
well,
bajillion number. Like
that's what I'm
Okay.
saying. It's ridiculous. That's 31,000 millions of hours. Like that's a lot of hours.
Gross. I don't know. It just is like, okay, yeah. And like, how many of those hours were like effective? like
Exactly.
maybe like
Yeah,
100,000 minutes.
Right.
or
That's
something.
exactly the question. Like this is a gargantuan waste of time. Think about all the productivity. Think about all the businessmen and engineers and English teachers that have been flying around the country and all the amazing things they could have done with the time saved,
But well, can I try to like? Let me try to push back for a second.
Sure.
I don't know why my brain went here, but
ahead.
like if there was a murderer, a serial murderer, killed 15 people, horrible. We hate this murderer, and they said that I'm good. Like and they calculated their life by minutes, and their murder minutes were only like several hours in their life, and they kind of made a case like I'm not. Yeah, I'm a murderer, and I've done 15 people, but like in the grand scheme of things, threw a bunch of numbers at you. I'm good most of the time. I mean, even if you've killed someone once, we'd say like you need to be put away, and we could even debate death penalty stuff. But like, so minutes, so security hopefully is boring a vast amount of time and is effective.
Granted, yeah.
It's difficult to know because I hate that sort of the pageantry of anything. Well, I like pageantry, let me be honest, but like the pageantry of safety is so obnoxious because they're not doing much. But pageantry of safety can actually make usually it's kind of like putting up a sign in your yard that says security, like, and it actually helps. It's like it was a $5 sign that says this home's protected by whatever security, and like
but
robber just goes away.
But if it was a $700,000 sign, then would you take that approach?
Yeah, well, yes, right.
So,
I mean, I'm with you that it's
yeah.
hard to just say all these wasted, even if you say they caught several bombers or whatever.
Well, I have an interesting argument on this topic. So there was a study done that tried to capture via methods that I didn't look into. So you can take it with whatever grain of salt you take every study. But it tried to estimate how many travelers were deterred from flying and instead pushed to driving because of the increased security measures. Because certainly you can imagine that if you have to choose between a 4-hour drive and with no security or little security hassle, it would be a 1.5 hour flight or a 2-hour flight. Then you would take the flight. But now with security stuff involved and the extra hassle, now they're going to be equivalent, and so it's cheaper to drive. And you have to imagine there are plenty of people who are on that borderline. I've been in that borderline myself before, where I choose to just drive instead of fly because it's easier. And so this study estimated that due to all those people who decide to drive instead of fly, and because driving is much more dangerous than flying, there are many more car accidents and fatalities due to driving than there are from flying, that actually every month 242 additional drivers are killed that otherwise would not have died. And so there actually is a cost in human life actuarially, because of
242. Did you say per month?
per month. That's what it says. That's what it
Oh.
said. That's what the study said.
Do your
So-
napkin math and tell me
that's-
that's all, over
that's what I'm-
20.
That's what I'm saying.
Years.
That's and like not to be
How many
too
9/11s is that? You know,
right. That's exactly what I was about to say. Not to be too provocative, you went there for me, but it was like what 3,000 people died in 9/11,
Yeah.
and we've easily eclipsed that in these shifted. Even if you say, oh, those aren't real because it's they might have chosen to drive anyway, whatever. Okay, fine. Cut the value in to 1/10. You're still exceeding the number in 9/11. So
Wow.
like it's a question of cost benefit, and we're actually generating more frustration. That's only in this weird example of diverted travelers to
It
driving.
is a weird example. I'm
mean-
trying to think of the merit of it. I think I buy it.
Oh, I
or I do
certainly
buy it.
I certainly buy that part of it, but like
I'm trying to think of a weird calculation of like as a society we're comfortable with something like accident deaths. I mean, if they went on the rise horrifically, and it was linked to texting, we might start a campaign to make people aware. Like, but we're scared of like murderers and terrorists. This is like fearful. It actually takes some sort of like psychological tax on the collective public. Like fear is very exhausting, the public fear, whereas we're not fearful of accidents, so our tolerance is way higher, which is distorted and weird. We should like be working on the stuff even if we're not scared of it. It's like fear is our motivator.
I think part of it is an inability to deal with small risk numbers, right? So the risk of being in a car accident is low. I mean, you and I still drive our cars around, and neither of us have died in a car accident yet, and
Right.
maybe we've been in a small car accident, but the odds of that happening are very low, and we're willing to risk that every day. And the odds of a terrorist hijacking our plane is also very low. How much lower is it than a car accident? We don't know. We just imagine that they're both negligibly low, and we don't have to worry.
It's like that number
about them.
I was just saying, a bajillion. It's
Right.
like
Right.
we in our mind they're the same, even though there's actually a giant difference.
Yeah, a
probably.
giant difference. I mean, the number of planes hijacked since and including 2001 is however many they hijacked in 2001. Right, that's the number. Like I think there was like one other, but it didn't have
Man,
passengers
TSA is
on the plane.
effective, I guess. You're making a good case.
I guess that's what you would say. But then if we were to go back an additional 40 years before 2001, the number doesn't increase very much, if at all. Because
Wasn't there? I'm pulling. Was it sort of like there would be these hijackings, and then they would like actually just land and negotiate and get a little money and try to like arrange plane like. I don't know. I don't know enough about history, but like this was more common than you would think. Not common.
I don't
but
think it was
like
common.
It happened. Okay.
Maybe there were attempts, or maybe maybe there was some case that I don't know of, a historical case that I don't know of. But my point is just that given there's 2.5 million passengers a day and however many flights that totals up to, like the odds of having your plane hijacked are so astronomically small, even when compared to a car accident. And because we just rationalize both of those away as small, and so they're equivalent, but they're not. They're not equivalent. That makes it easier for us to be afraid of them equivalently. So if that, let's talk about, we talked about the time cost of TSA, but what about the collective human frustration generated by them? I don't think that's something that we can totally neglect either.
Right. How do you propose measuring frustration?
Well, I'm not sure that I have an objective measure exactly, but we can certainly talk about some of the things that that contribute to the frustration. Like the time wasting is quantifiable, but for example, consider that, in my opinion, and the opinion of many others, this is pretty much a constant violation of the Fourth Amendment, which is the amendment against unreasonable search and seizure. So what reason do they have to suspect me of being a terrorist or some violent person, right? In fact, if you're considering it by the odds, the odds of me being a terrorist are just astronomically low. And then when you combine that with the odds of my toothpaste being a threat, that makes it such a tiny number that I don't see how you could possibly legally justify taking my toothpaste.
Yeah, you were legally robbed of your toothpaste, and
I
it's
was.
just like
Uh, like,
odd. It's odd, and we just kind of like we accept, like we just kind of go, that's frustrating, but it's deeper than that. If we want to get ideological about it, I guess we just got to be like, no, this is absolutely wrong. We live in a society that's taking people's toothpaste. I mean, there's just cost of living in a society sometimes that are like that we have to deal with. But
sure, right.
but dang it does
Well,
bother me on some level. So you can't just go around, and it's gonna lead to profiling and
Yes.
stuff and all. But like
Well,
you
it
know,
has.
which
Let me
it's
read.
just-
The,
you have
here-
to profile.
Here's the
you know?
text. Here's the text of the Fourth Amendment. You tell me if you think that TSA is violating this. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. So, to me, like, you can't just generally screen people for anything and everything with no warrant or anything like that, and then seize their effects. Like, this is just clear violation.
What do
in
you
my
think?
opinion.
I mean, yeah, that based on that language and
Obviously,
yes, and so,
I'm sure that they've taken this to court, and there were some legal deliberations on it, and some judges decided, well, in the effect, in the
since
consideration
you
of
give up some rights when
security,
you
blah,
just,
blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
buy
So-
it anymore. Like, I don't buy it. It needs to be revisited. In the
I want to
panic.
know that. I want to know what they actually say about why going to an airport. Well, airports are not. Are they private? Like, I guess. Would it be a loophole where if you want to visit our airport, you have to agree to these conditions of giving up your right to be secure? What was the word secure in there? That's funny. Giving up your right to your own not privacy. Was it privacy? Searched and all
Yeah,
that. Anyway.
unreasonable search and seizure is the Fourth Amendment. Even if that's the case, I don't see why airports are substantively different from train stations or bus stations, and why
Yeah.
the security measures aren't just as strict in those places. Because
And you could argue small crime happens in like malls more often, so we should
Yes.
really be doing this at malls.
Exactly,
people getting
right,
bites
like
at
if-
malls. People.
that's the thing. Like, if we took the same fanatical approach to preventing even the smallest chance of risk in other areas of American life, then we would live in a total, security hellhole. Like, you wouldn't be able to walk on the sidewalk.
And by the way, we react to that. Like schools that operate under a surveillance state, kids rebel by like the second they're not observed.
Right.
They break things, steal things, do bad things. But and similarly, like at schools like the ones I work at, like they don't have monitored study hall. They're just like, you can be around campus anywhere, and yeah, occasionally you get a hooligan who gets in trouble, but like, okay, like they were where they weren't supposed to be. Or in the really scandalous, like we suspended someone for going to an off-campus lunch when they shouldn't have, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But that's like the scandal of the year kind of thing. It's like, if you don't have a surveillance state, then people don't respond like that. So I'm just thinking out loud about like when you are surveilled, it makes you want to break the rules and find out like what. Anyway,
Think about this too. The scanning machines that they use basically photograph you naked.
I have thought about that. I'm like, wait, what is it getting? And your story you shared, I just want to say this really quickly. I've had my toothpaste specifically taken, and I've had my waist area claimed to 3 or 4 times, and I've asked them. I said, I don't have a belt on. I've never had any. I just want to know, what is there something in my bones possibly? And they're like, there's just anomalies on these things all the time. And I have this is just a complete theory of but like they want us to be used to there being, so they can just do random searches, like, and do random stuff and say, oh, there's an anomaly, let me pat you down. And like, not because they have like some I'm not making a perversion case. I'm just making they need to justify their job, and they don't care about calibrating the machines. They just let it have all the glitchy stuff, and like, and when it's busy and they need it, I could have a little glitch there at the crotch area, and they just go, I don't care, this guy, like, they can just look at me and be like, oh, what a goof, like, he's not a threat, and like, it's too busy, and I'll just search someone else in a second anyway. So I think it's absolutely arbitrary. Yeah, and I do not feel safer. I mean, oh, and the shoes thing, whether I take them off or not,
Yeah.
whether your computer is actually turned all the way off in a separate storage bin, all those
Right.
little like things. It's like, anyway, your story just struck me as so similar to mine, and I'm like, why? Why are we having such similar like toothpaste and
Well,
waste stories?
I'm
Like,
sure
is that just
everyone probably has had similar experiences, and that's part of the collective time wasted and collective frustration that goes into it. If everyone
yeah?
has an experience like this, then we have to ask ourselves, is it worth it?
Well,
But like
yeah.
on this topic of frustration, like the machines do essentially photograph you naked. They can and have been reviewed by human beings, and then the images can be saved. That's been documented that the images can be saved. So like this is not only a Fourth Amendment violation due to search and seizure, but potentially a privacy violation as well. And there have been cases where people have gotten in trouble for this sort of thing.
Especially to me, it's these low level security cop mall people like looking at everyone's naked bodies. Like that is
Well,
not.
it's not.
Like yeah.
Thankfully, it's not exactly that way anymore. You've probably seen now when you go out and you look on the little screen, it's like a little stick figure model, and it puts a little box around the suspicious area if you have one. And so
Yeah.
they try to obscure it a little bit now, but that doesn't mean that the photographs aren't still existing on the machines.
They are exist. They have to.
They
That's
have
what
to,
it's
right?
doing. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
they have to. Here's another thing that contributes to collective frustration. If you ever check your bags, I don't ever check bags, but if you put locks on your checked bags, they have to be openable by TSA locks.
Oh yeah, TSA approved. I've
TSA
had that when I
approved
bought a
locks.
piece of luggage. It said TSA approved lock. It's like
Which is ridiculous. That means they have to have a master key that can open all of those locks, which makes the locks essentially worthless, right? Do you think
yeah.
thieves are unable to get their hands on a TSA, pick or mold or whatever to open these TSA approved locks? Of course
Right.
they can.
They're gonna be
So,
readily available to all these TSA agents. That means
right. And
Yeah.
the reason why the locks have to be TSA approved is because in your absence, the TSA agents need to be able to open your luggage and go through it again, which I think is a privacy violation.
Yeah.
And then all
I'm
right,
frustrated listening to all this.
of course, it's frustrating stuff. All right, and now to your concern about seizures, seizing an aircraft hangar full of toothpaste, maybe we can write that off because we don't value toothpaste that much. But apparently, there's so many instances of baggage theft every year from TSA. Some years it can be $300,000 in claims. So that's only if you claim it. That doesn't count the stuff that doesn't get claimed. And speaking personally, I've had an iPod stolen by TSA, or if it wasn't by TSA, it was by an extraordinarily stealthy passenger. But I was in the security line, had my iPod in an unzipped pocket of my bag, and then of course, when it came through the security line, it was not in there anymore. So
Wow.
jerks.
And like, it would be difficult. They would be absolutely invested in covering that up because if they gained a reputation or the government, it'd be very difficult.
Yes.
For the public outcry would be fierce and swift, and they just have to shut that down. So although they might even fire someone for it, they would not be very public about that information, and they would tell the customer or the the plaintiff, I guess, it didn't happen. We just don't know what you're talking about. Sorry, and we just wouldn't know. Like, which, by the way, to tie to our last podcast, it's like the medical community. What I'm frustrated what Danielle went through is like, I think they made a mistake. I think there was probably something not followed in terms of cleaning their tools, their properly or whatever. And yet, I'm not being Sue happy. I just would love for the doctor to have to sit there and think and then go, oh my God, we are being a little lazy here because I don't like save someone else in the future. Yet no one in the name of the industry continuing and not being sued all the time. They're just all invested in saying, oh, nothing to see here, move along. And I would think the same thing about theft in this case. Like they have to cover it up. And
Right.
so, that doctor is never going to reflect or even maybe know that Danielle went through what she went through. I just wonder that.
Yeah.
So like, and so these people steal, and these are doctors with like, a lot more. In order to get there where they're at, they had to do a lot more.
Yeah.
So these are insecure security positions, I would think.
Yeah.
Like, anyway, I'm getting ticked, Bennett. Keep ticking me off. I mean, ugh.
Well, I've got a couple more things that'll tick you off, and then we can try to talk about the benefits. Although that'll probably tick you off too. The verdict isn't good. Let me just spoiler alert. The verdict isn't good. That's kind of all of the intangible frustrations that I thought of. But there's also like the actual cost, monetary cost, like the budget of the TSA. In 2023 was between $6 and $8 billion.
Yeah.
From 2007 to 2016, it was between 6 and 8 billion. In 2023, it was $9.7 billion. In 2020, it was close to 8. So again, I couldn't find it for every year. I'm sure that data exists, but taking the average in there, it's probably about $110 billion since it was founded. And that's just for the budget.
And that's our money. That's the government.
Yes, that's a
paying.
taxpayer money.
Yeah.
So that's our money. That's what you're paying your 20% or 25% tax on your income for. All the taxes on your food, gas, everything else, sales tax and such. That's where all of that is going, is to waste, pure waste. And then listen to this. I thought this was wild. Since 2005, when it became allowed, they've gotten nearly $7 million in change that's just been left behind by passengers.
What do you mean it became allowed? They were just like, look, we're not going to try to track down if we find quarters and stuff like that. Like, you just get to keep it.
Yeah, I don't know what the rules were prior to 2005. Maybe they had to turn it into the the government in some other fashion. But now they just get to keep it and add it to their budget.
Ugh.
And then
that's odd.
That's just change left behind. But they've also confiscated billions of dollars in other money and property.
Yeah, you add up that toothpaste. I mean, like, yeah.
Yeah, and then not only that, but TSA charges a fee for every passenger. So this is a fee that I believe the airlines ultimately have to pay, so it gets passed on to customers. They charge a fee for every passenger, and in 2020, that made them $2.4 billion. So that made up part of their budget.
Do you mean it's just like worked in the reason the ticket?
The reason the ticket price is some amount higher is because of this fee that they have to charge for every passenger. This is how they continue to operate, and so that was $2.4 billion collectively in 1 year. So like put all of that together, and like part of the reason why plane tickets are so extraordinarily expensive now. And there are many reasons for it, but part of it is because TSA is charging you a fee and costing the airlines and the other companies that deal with air travel money to deal with the regulation and the imposition on everyone's time and effort. So it's a huge drag in efficiency.
Yes. I think, is it fair to say, by the way, all security measures are drags on efficiency?
I guess it depends on kind of the start and end point that you're measuring.
Let's take kind of really basic standpoint, like lock on a door. When it's less efficient than just walking through an open door, or even when I could just
typing your password into your computer, whatever. Yeah, all
these things, are just delays in order to secure. Like you compromise efficiency. Basically you're compromising efficiency in some way, and potential like privacy and freedom and these other things. But I'm just thinking if that compounded like security, then I go back on like, well, security is unfortunately necessary. A world in which there are no locks on doors, no antivirus software. Like if people were just not a-holes, oh my gosh. Imagine the industry, all locks, all security, all.
Dude, I think about that. I think about that every day because on my work computer, like I have to like type in key codes and passwords, and I have to log in probably 40 times a day to various prompts, and like all that time, collective time, and like I won't complain about IT crap that much, but like for one of my logins, I have to sit there and wait for the little spinny wheel to spin while it crunches the security numbers for, I don't know, it's probably 15 to 20 seconds, which that doesn't sound long, but when I have to log in every day multiple times that way, like I'm just sitting there waiting on it to log in.
Criminals and terrorists ruin things. Like prison system, imagine that costs a lot too. Like I mean wars and things. Yeah, just criminal. If you, I know I'm sounding silly, and I know I'm sounding silly, but if you just were like, don't do bad things.
Send them back to Australia again and just leave them there.
Don't do bad things. And when I say bad, you can even be lazy and you can be negligent even, but like if you just aren't actively horrible to your fellow human, which is not an unreasonable request.
It's definitely not unreasonable.
like you could be the laziest, you could do all the drugs, whatever, you could like, and like we'll just accept that cost, but I don't want to accept the cost of you going, well, I'm going to actively destroy what you've created. Like, oh man, screw you. And out of this, we have the TSA because of you. Like, I don't know, man.
Let me ask one more question. I think you might like this question regarding the costs, the negatives of TSA. How much damage do you think they've caused to the emotional or spiritual experience of travel and adventure involved in flying and going to an airport? Like, do you think there's any ground to stand on there to say that they've impacted what it means to travel?
Well, yes, I do, but even having a discussion about it gets kind of nebulous on like, well, the spirit of adventure, the spirit of adventure is huge, and then making it just feels, I think everything, it winds up, I don't want to use the word corporate or soulless, maybe I can use these words, but when big government, big business, big whatever gets a hold of something, it all becomes samey, and it all becomes like treating us like we're on some mechanical, being poked and prodded, going on some treadmill through it all, and like this is, and the education system can be this way. Everything, and it just feels samey, and in a very, very dystopian bad way. And so if you're doing that to adventure or visiting loved ones or whatever, unfortunately we want to, like, flying is such an unbelievable convenience. People are going to just shrug and go, what you going to do? I want to fly. It's just not an option. And if that means getting on this treadmill, that's sad, because travel doesn't have to be that way. Like people kind of have accepted that it's like cattle on a cart in the air, flying through the air. I do think of the old days where it was like, pretty stewards, and you dress up, and people behaved, and it
like
was
the ashtrays on every armrest.
It was an experience. The idea of it's like you dress up to go to church. There are things holy in our society, and flying through the air like that was a little. It sounds like it was holy. It was like, yeah, here we go. Look at this phenomenon, and like you're gonna be treated like this is special, and that sounds neat. Why not continue to make travel special? And I imagine there are some airlines that could say something like, yeah, we're going to charge more for a ticket, but you're actually not going to be treated like a cow, but you will be poked and prodded in the airport anyway. Well, like TSA, like you're just going to have this terrible experience.
That's part of it. Like people who are opposed to my viewpoint on this might argue that, back in the time that we're talking about in the 50s or 60s or whenever, you pick whatever idyllic period you're comparing it to, that the cost has really dropped precipitously, because I didn't do any research on this, so I apologize for that.
Yeah, but that's the idea I get, yeah.
But my argument would be, you may be right that the cost has dropped somewhat and now more people can afford to fly, but the cost hasn't dropped that much. Like, it hasn't dropped enough. Like, you're still paying, close to $1,000 for certain flights across the country. And that doesn't seem as affordable as it should be, given we've been flying for many decades now. And we've had this organized airline industry for many decades. Now, it seems like airfare should be extraordinarily cheap. We should be paying like when you see those ridiculous like Spirit Airlines flights that are like $50, that should be the norm. That shouldn't be, actually a ripoff price that they're lying to you about. That should be the normal price. It should be like, you should just be able to kind of show up at the airport and then zip somewhere and have it be, have it be a relatively low cost to you.
You haven't really bought a ticket, or you buy it 24 hours beforehand. Like, that's pretty normal. It's like, instead of having to buy a ticket weeks in advance or a month in advance or whatever, you're just sort of like, you're showing up. Lots of people are showing up, but the responsible ones buy like 1 to 2 days beforehand. But you can show up. It's, some risk in it. But like, that would be, and it is. It's $50 to $100. If you're going somewhere weird like Alaska, it's $200. But like, okay, and you're just treating it it's like Uber or like some sort of, you could do subscription service of I fly anywhere and I'll just pay $100 a month, and it includes my transportation. Like in the future, I don't have a car, but I like have an subscription to Uber that picks me up at 7 a.m. every day to go to work, and it comes with lots of flights and stuff too.
Right. Well, that kind of amazing future could be true if we didn't have the TSA dragging everything down and costing additional money, and then the government regulating the airlines so insanely, so that everything has to be tightly controlled.
What about like the tightly controlled? Like, you mean like to make sure that standards, like basically the planes are put together and are inspected every X amount of time and all of that?
I'm not saying that inspections and standards are bad. I'm saying that having the government responsible for it, that might be bad. The government is bad at everything that it does, and I don't believe that they do that job either effectively or efficiently. And it could be done better privately by like a private third-party company that was in charge of inspections or something like that. Or even like, honestly, even if it was done by the airlines themselves, then it would be more risky, but the market could decide that. If you had your
unfortunately, it'd be a few plane crashes that they're known for being crappy and no one flies them. They shut down, and it's like you better keep yourself well regulated. You better stay in line and keep your The market would encourage safety. Just like it does for
fundamentally many other industries that aren't as tightly regulated. I think we're over-regulated in general in the United States, but there are other industries that are not nearly as heavily regulated, and still the market pushes
It's funny,
for safety.
like what if you're because it would be considered a radical proposal of like deregulating tons of stuff, and then like the cost is maybe a few extra plane crashes over 10 years, and you look at the numbers and it's so many more people fly. Like you said, the 249 deaths a month or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
That like you've saved lots of lives, and unfortunately there have been 3 extra plane crashes or something like that.
Right, but even still, the scales balance. We've spent a lot of time talking about the costs of the TSA. Before we end the podcast, I do want to try to, in good faith, talk about the benefits. Unfortunately,
Tell me how many terrorists and stuff they've definitely caught. Like, can you do that? Are there any notable? Hey, they caught the underwear terrorist or the shoe terrorist or something.
I would love to do that. And in fact, I attempted to find that information, but the TSA does not disclose any terrorists that have been caught or any measure of their own effectiveness with regards to real people that have been caught. They don't disclose that information. So actually, there's no transparency, and the public does not know whether they have been effective in that. But what I can tell you is that covert tests have been done routinely, continue to be done routinely, to test how effective the TSA is. The TSA performs some of these themselves, and of course they don't disclose the results to the public. But one leaked in 2006 and showed that 20 out of 22 of their tests were failures. This included missing guns and bombs that they overlooked. In 2015, there was another investigation done. I didn't write down who carried out this investigation. I don't think it was the TSA. But 95% of the smuggling attempts through TSA were successful. So they had a 5% success rate in stopping people who were smuggling things. through TSA.
Yeah, 1 in 20. Yeah.
And now, if you do any research on this on the TSA website, they claim that they stop thousands of guns every year. The problem with this is that it's just people who put it in the wrong bags, or they don't unload their ammunition or whatever, and they count that as stopping
That's
a
so
gun.
stupid.
This isn't.
Yeah,
This isn't the same thing. This isn't someone intending to smuggle a gun onto the plane to shoot the
It's a
pilot or
hunter
whatever.
that put it in the
right.
wrong
So
place or something.
there are no available stats that I was able to find in my brief research that could justify. It wasn't like, oh, we've stopped 72 terrorists since 2001. There was no information like that. Nothing that to me proved that they have been able to justify this. And the failure rate suggests that, even if there was a coordinated terrorist attack, they wouldn't be able to stop them effectively.
And those failure rates are gross. Like, if you were to tell me like they only stopped it 45% of the time, isn't that awful? I'd say, now hold on a second. I don't know how stealthy and 45%. I mean, they're catching I don't know. There is a percentage I'd be comfortable with lots of even the.
Sure.
I just throw that number out there because that's a lot of failure. 55% failures sounds scary and terrible, but then you think, wait, they really are catching nearly half of every attempt. That's pretty impressive. But when you get down to I think it's impressive. I don't know. At least it's debatable. Like, it's not like you have to catch 95% in order for me to be on board and go, this is effective. What they're doing is effective. But like, when you're at 5%, we're not even in close to the discussion of effective. Like, you have to go, that's horrible. It's like, it's tragically bad,
I mean, I think, isn't the murder, the homicide solve rate pretty low? Isn't it like 40% or something?
That's what we should do, is look at that. That's interesting. If you could, if that's a quick
I'm
Google
gonna
thing,
search
then
it.
do
I
it.
don't.
Because that's about because you expect some people get murder. I mean, it's weird. It's tough. It's like we live in a free society mostly, and you can go do stuff, and tracking down, if you're trying to be clever about it, that could be very tough to catch a murderer. And so TSA isn't trying to catch a murderer. They're just trying to catch someone literally coming up to on their terms, at their turf, and their equipment, and they're saying, I have the right to look through your stuff. And they're still failing 95% of the time. Why are they so bad at it? You get to control the gate. You get to control. You have all this money and devices, and yes, lots of people are going through. I mean, that's the answer. Is there's just so many going through. But it's on your terms. So catch more people or dismantle. And and how many are threats? Is it one in, how many people are a threat?
That's what I'm saying. Astronomically low.
And honestly, if I'm a terrorist right now and I'm thinking, let's do something big, wouldn't you just kind of bypass? There's probably other cultural weaknesses that are not why does the airport, this magnificent, the holy grail of weakness?
It's not. Well, I mean, I don't know if you've ever done this, but I've done this before. I have no terrorist leanings. I don't want to be a terrorist, but sometimes I do think, if I wanted to cause the most amount of mayhem and destruction, what would I do? And I do this in airports, thinking, oh yeah, if I did want to smuggle something in, how would I do it? And there are so many vectors. There's so many ways that you could get something past TSA. Like in one airport that I frequently fly into, not the one here where I live, there's a huge open area. Airports are very tall and have a lot of open space. There's a huge open area above the security line. You could just catapult something over there. You can see birds fly over security back and forth because someone let a bird into the airport. And there's this huge open area. You could just catapult something over there and no one would notice. They wouldn't be looking.
Sounds ridiculous. Catapult.
Doesn't it sound ridiculous? But you could just launch it, just ballistically launch whatever little bitty package over and have someone catch it on the other side, or just have it land. And these security people aren't looking for that. They're just herding the cattle through the lines and looking at their little screens. Think about all the drone stuff that's been going on lately. I'm sure that they have.
Yeah, no, that's
at least
quiet little drone.
I would hope that they have sensors on the boundaries of the airport that would catch small unmanned drones, but I don't know that.
I think
And
I think
when I
that's
look
what you're.
like when I look at the runways and there are people's houses on the other side of a chain link fence from the airport land, like
Yeah, yeah.
someone on that property could just launch something at a plane, and that's just not that crazy.
Yeah, yeah. And when you think about vulnerabilities, it's like arenas and sports security is like very weak. You walk through
Sure.
something that resembles some sort of metal detector.
Right.
And the security guards are basically just like the same people who kind of herd traffic and take your $20 for parking.
Yes.
Like it's not.
That's
it's
why.
not.
That's why. Like
Yeah.
ultimately, after looking in, I already had this suspicion, but even after looking into it, this just seems like theater to me. I think that
Yeah.
phrase is one that you see a lot: security theater. Like it's not
Yeah.
actually making us safer. It's costing us a lot of money, a lot of frustration, a lot of time, and it just makes us feel nice. But it's not actually helping us anymore. Like
But it also makes us feel terrible. Like everyone hates it. So
sure.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, we just need to come to grips with the fact that living has there's a risk inherent in living, and you understand this if you ever hop in your car. You're taking your life into your own hands, and you might get in a car accident and die. And if you fly in an airport, you might have a terrorist hijack your plane and blow it up or something. But it's so extremely unlikely that it shouldn't really deter you from flying. So I did want to ask, just at the very end, we don't have to spend but a couple of minutes on this. If you have any ideas, revolutionary, like take all the limitations off, and we're looking 20 to 50 years down the road. If you could change travel in any way you wanted, how would you do it? Like, are there ways that the travel experience could be made much better?
Are you asking me to invent transportation and like,
Sure, yeah.
or
And invent stuff, change the system, change the procedures. This isn't even necessarily talking about TSA exactly, but just airport travel. There are a lot of problem points with it.
I mean, isn't the answer surely going to lie in technology, whether it's safety and
so.
security or something like an Elon Musk style underground railway that's smooth and glides and people are in these tubes and or I don't know, like individual pods, like flying,
Yeah,
like
that's what I was thinking
Uber
too.
stuff that flies you around.
Yeah, I wrote that
and
down.
just-
Drone Ubers.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it just and generally, because you always have to think about how can these things be corrupted. Like drones delivering food, people will throw rocks and stuff at it. But like, if it's and so you're like, are they going to shoot down people and stuff? But like, for the most part, people can theoretically go and shoot up people, and that doesn't happen
Sure.
that often. And
Right.
and we, like you said, we just live in a
think
world
about
where we go,
there
yeah,
are-
there's risk, but it doesn't happen. So
I mean,
same with
if you've ever driven your car under a bridge on the interstate, like you're going 80 miles an hour, and if someone were to drop a brick off of that
Yeah.
overpass and hit your car, then you would probably die.
right, right. And people could go do like no one's stopping people from doing that. So
No,
I just
I mean-
think the drone thing is not, like the overblown about people saying, oh well, people will like shoot you down or something. Like no, like
Yeah.
people, the reason they're doing it with food is because it's this novelty thing. It is trashy and terrible. I'm not excusing
Sure.
it, but I'm saying like you knock down a pizza, like you just don't have. A lot of people wouldn't have the moral. It's not unconscionable. It's like a dumb kid going, see if we can knock that pizza down. That'd be
Right.
funny. Versus it's not funny even to a kid to like hurt human beings. So I think that's awesome. I even think that security, I don't know how to do that. I mean, privacy violation would run amok with like, facial recognition and all this stuff. But like in theory, like it's all the second you set on that campus, you don't need to put things through, like you're being scanned every freaking second anyway. That doesn't necessarily, at least efficiency wise, that takes care of business.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't have to go through these lines and stuff. It's just you're monitored and everyone's being monitored. But that's also maybe worse to me. Like your privacy is absolutely and utterly violated.
Yeah.
But imagine this though. Imagine that's everyone's being scanned, all their baggage is being scanned, and they're like, Bennett, excuse me, and they know it's you. They know it's literally Bennett because they've already scanned your face and gotten your profile. Give me your toothpaste.
give me that toothpaste.
You have 2.8 ounces. You know the legal limit's 2.7 or whatever it is. Give me that toothpaste.
Oh, jeez.
But if it's actually if we're talking that high tech, it could actually scan the chemicals so that there'd be none of these silly limits because it would just go like, oh, that's definitely toothpaste.
Yeah.
But I noticed you also brought baking soda, and those two things together can create a hazardous gas or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, right. Mustard gas. I was thinking like if you wanted to take the least technologically radical step, but one step that could be done is, why don't we just put like a police officer or like an air marshal or whatever on every plane? Like, why don't we have the pilot, the co-pilot, and the flight crew? Like, why don't we not do TSA and not do all the scanning and everything, but just have an officer on the plane to just to be there,
badass dude just there, and that gives you, to me, that actually is a more effective.
I agree.
If you don't want pageantry anyway,
right.
but like I see a guy who's like, and he roams up and down the aisles, like he's not just sitting in a seat going to sleep or something. He's just like along with the flight attendants and watching people and like doing his thing, security. I mean, he can be friendly. I'm not saying he has to have like aviators and like stare people down and like,
sure,
what you doing there, playing your video games or something. I don't know.
Let me see that toothpaste.
Yeah.
Let me take a taste of that.
He squirts some out. He brushes a little bit with it.
Brush. What is this? This isn't whitening.
Yeah, you're right. Like, that's a fairly simple, and people knowing. I mean,
and so much cheaper.
Yeah. Funny enough, so much cheaper.
So much cheaper. My next most complicated idea, or my next lowest tech idea, was like, one thing I always notice is how crappy the boarding process is. Like, the airplanes have one door, sometimes two doors, but you mostly always board through one door.
Right.
And then you walk in a slow line down a tiny aisle to squeeze into your seats. Like, if we can like send people to the moon and send rockets to Mars and stuff, like, can't we engineer a plane that opens in such a way that everyone can board like simultaneously? Like, imagine. Oh
yeah, like just the side of it opens, the whole thing.
Yeah, right. The side of the plane like opens up, and everyone can board row by row. And so instead of standing in one line, you're standing in 30 lines that are 4 people long or something.
Yes, and then it's all like marked on the carpet anyway, and it pulls right up to the glass,
right up to it, and like they should.
And you get off that way. I mean,
they should make the runway kind of like, how if you're on the interstate and there's a way station, you just kind of pull off into the way station and merge back onto the interstate if you're a trucker. Yeah. Like, it should be that way for the runways. You just pull off the runway, and here you are at your gate, and then you pull back on and take off. Like, you shouldn't have to do all of this taxiing. Like, there's one airport, I think when I fly into, like, Chicago, I think it is. Sometimes I lay over in Chicago, and you just taxi forever. After you land, you're just driving. You're just driving your plane around for 20 minutes to get to your gate or to get to the takeoff spot. And, like, that seems like that efficiency can be cleaned up.
Yeah. Because I thought you were going to say just add more doors, but, like, make the whole thing open up.
Yeah, to make the whole thing open. And yeah, sure. Look, I'm not an aeronautical engineer, but like, it doesn't seem to me like this should be a major technological barrier.
No, that is not inconceivable to say, here's a big device that opens up like that. Like that, yeah. I mean, it especially if we're invested as a society. This is a major innovative thing, like that would save however many hours, some trillions of hours.
It would knock a couple trillion off of them.
The slow, because now you're only slowed down by the 1 gram, the 2 grandmas that take an extra 5 minutes. Okay, your entire plane takes the extra 5 minutes.
Right.
But those 2 grandmas slow you down like 40 minutes if
sure.
in the way it exists now.
And think about missed flights. Like, there are many times when they've had to come over the intercom and say, "Oh, we have a lot of people on this flight with a short connection. Like, please let them off first."
And none of that happens.
That doesn't happen, and it still takes you a long time to get off the plane. And I'm sure people miss their flights that way. And this would reduce that risk considerably and the cost of that. So
That just makes so much sense to me. Do
I
you have
had
any other solutions?
I had another good idea. This one is a little bit wackier, but imagine that. Well, one other thing I noticed that's a problem is storing the luggage on the plane, right? Like you can check your bag and they throw it underneath, or you can carry on a bag and it's in the overhead bins. But that means that you don't have a lot of headroom, and it's a hassle having everyone carry their stupid luggage onto the plane, and when it doesn't fit,
Right.
then they have to deal with it and everything. But what if like the luggage size was standardized? It was, it's close to that now, but what if it really
Right.
truly was standardized and maybe had a standardized connector on it or something, and the plane was constructed such that the seat, your luggage makes up part of your seat. So like the seats are like this empty frame or something, and you bring your luggage on, which is this cube or box of stuff in a particular shape, and it slots right down into the floor, and then the seat goes clunk, and like clips forward right on top of it, so that the luggage is
So the seats are
essentially
lifted like a toilet lid, and you put it in the box.
Yeah,
the
kind of.
square, the frame,
Yeah,
and then you
kind of
shut
like that.
the lid. You
Yeah,
shut the lid.
kind of like
Is
that. But what I'm saying is the luggage becomes part of the frame of the seats in the plane, right? And so it's no longer taking up its own space in the plane. It's part of what you're already using as the seat or the floor.
Yeah. Or why not the floor have some like not a trap door but a door, and
That could- yeah, sure. That
all
could
the
be
containment
similar.
beneath the plane. It's just literally you have access to your compartment beneath the plane.
Right.
Right there with a little door. I mean,
Yep.
that's a lot of doors, and I don't know.
That's
but,
fine.
Yeah.
We can do it. I believe in us. I believe we can do it.
Because the overhead storage, it's a strange idea. I mean, it kind of works, but like storing a bunch of things over your head like loosely is odd. Because if you didn't have that, well, you could stand. I don't know. You don't really. It's a good place. We should maintain storage there, I suppose. But there's just trying to think. Yeah, physically laying out travel on.
Well,
a
if you
plane
didn't
is
have the overhead storage for luggage, then you could conceivably have little like beds up there, and like for long flights, you could like take a nap up there. Like it could be a little
Yeah.
like bunk, like a little bunk up there or something, and you could have a nice
That's
rest.
fascinating.
That would be nice.
You could, so when you buy a ticket, you could upgrade to getting one or not kind of thing, And,
Sure.
Yeah, get in there. I like it.
The only other idea I had is pure sci-fi, so it's not even remotely realistic, but it would be super cool. Like instead of having these big airliners that fit 100 people or however many people they fit into them, I guess more than 100 on some of them. Instead, you have like these little small gliders, jets or gliders that are launched from like these big rail guns. So you could aim the rail gun anywhere, right, and just launch it, and then you just glide for however many hundreds of miles, and so you have more of these little airport launch places that are closer together, but then you can take a more direct, quick hops directly to where you want to go. Instead of herding into these giant hubs that are inefficient and take a long time.
It's just what tickled me
I know
is
it's
that, like,
ridiculous. Pure sci-fi,
the speed,
totally. It doesn't
I like
exist.
it, but the speed of if you have these amazing gliders so if I'm going from like California to New York, though, the initial launch is like a hell of
you're
a
you're obviously
thrust.
not you're not gonna make it in one go probably. Oh, I mean, this is a sci-fi idea we're talking about, so yeah, maybe it launches you really fast
Just a little
and
faster.
then,
Yeah.
and then you have a jet engine on board that does keep you at speed while you're going. But they're small craft, so there's no reason they couldn't go faster than our giant airliners do right now. And obviously, there's be a ton of logistics to work out and everything. But I thought it would just be a super cool idea, right? To have a more private flying experience. It's just you and you and maybe one other person, like some safety person, or maybe I don't know if maybe they're automated. I don't know, and that's all it is, and you're just launched at super high speed to go straight where you want to go. Like imagine that, in the same way that you have multiple bus stops in your city. You just have a
Yeah.
whole bunch of
Lots of
these little
gliders.
landing or launch spots, and you can just launch off from a bunch of different locations. That would be cool.
If it got really common, every workplace pretty much has their own anyway. If it was cheap, as it got cheaper, not
That-
not just bus station types, but like like every place of note.
Right.
Every apartment complex has one. You
Right.
know.
That idea it reminds me of an idea I had when I was a little kid. I don't know, I must have been like 8 or 9 years old or something, and I was thinking like, you know what? It would be cool if I just had a road from my house to everywhere
Yeah.
I wanted to go, like to Chick-fil-A and to Pizza Hut and to Daniel's house and
Bennett's Road. You're the only one that.
I'm the
drove
only
it.
one on the road, but it's just a road for me that goes to everywhere I want to go, and that's kind of
No traffic.
no traffic, right? This is kind of the evolution of that idea.
I like it. Well, you fixed things clearly. Screw
Yes.
the TSA.
Screw the TSA. Abolish it. Dismantle it. When I become president, that's going to be one of the first to go.
One of their platforms.
Yeah. Eliminate the TSA, and I've got a
You'll
bunch of other
eliminate a
ones.
lot, I think.
I'll eliminate a whole lot. That could fill multiple episodes. But the TSA,
I think you would
first
leave
on the
very
chopping
little.
I would leave
be
very
left.
little. I would, because the federal government does not need to have much in it. So
Yeah.
that's all.
Okay. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Do-do-do-do-do-do.
Do-do-do-do-do.